What's up, everybody? BigSweetC here. Got another fantastic episode of the Another Gamer Dad podcast. It is episode number 8. And I've got a good one for you today. We're going to talk about a recent adventure my wife and I took over the weekend, being responsible parents. I want to talk about Final Fantasy VII a little bit more in depth. And I want to talk a little disappointing fantasy hockey ending, but a great start to the fantasy baseball season. So it should be good. And then we're going to end in our cinema segment with my thoughts on the Fallout TV show. Spoiler alert. But we're going to start with my wife and I. We don't go out much. The truth is, as you get older, you got to start. Well, you don't have to if you don't want to, I guess. But in my opinion, one of the reasons why I really stuck with my wife is because I knew she was going to be not just like a loyal companion, but a fantastic mother as well. And that's, the truth is, if you're going to marry somebody and have children with them, you don't want just somebody that's just going to be there, right? You want somebody that's going to help you raise your children. And I knew my wife was going to be one of the most caring people on planet and Earth. And so that's also part of the reason that really attracted me to her, and one of the reasons why we stayed together for so long. And then we decided to start a family together. We got married, and we had our son Christopher. But as as I was getting older, the nightlife for me started to take its toll, right? And so when I was in high school, I was a little bit of an alcoholic and a drug addict, I would say. I wouldn't say really a drug addict. It's not like I had access to a whole lot of stuff, being in high school and whatnot. But alcohol was very easy to find. Weed was pretty easy to find, but alcohol was very easy to find. So I was a pretty, I would say, self-admitted raging alcoholic, right? And that runs in my family, so it makes sense. But I used to be able to go out on a Friday night, Saturday night, it's Sunday morning, and just get shit faced, right? And I'd wake up the next day and I'd be in perfectly fine shape. I did that for a long time. High school, college, went through Michigan State. Most of the first half of my my life in LA, I was able to do that. And then there just comes a time when your body is just like, hey, I can't do this anymore. Your liver can't process the poison as quickly. Your head just starts pounding. The fact that you sleep through the night doesn't mean you're getting good sleep, so your body just has to rest. And I bring this up because my wife and I don't go out very much, and generally we somewhat feel bad because we're always turning down our friends to go out and do stuff, and it has nothing to do with them. It has absolutely nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with us. We're homebodies. It's one of the reasons that we get along so well is because we like to be at home. We like to be with our son. Hopefully, we like to be with our future kids as well. But we don't really go out that much. Now, when we first had Christopher, we were both still stoner parents. We would set him up in front of Coco Melon, or we wait until he took his first and second nap, and then we'd sneak out into the garage and we'd smoke a little weed every now and then. But as I've gotten older, I haven't been able to do that as much. The health again is just not there, and it happens regardless of who you are, or I mean, even LeBron James at some point is going to start breaking down. It's just a fact of life, and so I on the health side of it, I developed a really bad cough, and it turns out that I haven't been officially diagnosed with it, but a few doctors that I know have come to tell me that I probably have what's called chronic bronchitis. It's when you develop too much mucus, and at night it seeps down into your lungs and it makes it harder to breathe. And so I wake up coughing a lot, and sometimes I get in these little anxiety fits where it does. I have to like sit there and remind myself to breathe, and I have to sit there and I have to cough up a lot of this phlegm that's gotten stuck in my lungs. And so the easiest way, they said, to help relieve some of that is to quit smoking. Now, obviously, when they talk about smoking, they're talking about nicotine. We just kind of don't acknowledge that that marijuana is a a thing now, right? And so I have never really smoked cigarettes. So I tried it a few times throughout high school and throughout college. But the truth is, I just never liked the taste of cigarettes, and so it was very easy for me to just, nah, I'm good. Even when I was just super wasted, nah, I'm good on the cigarettes. But I love being high. I'm not gonna lie. Like I find it really fun to kind of be stoned and playing video games or watching movies and stuff like that. And so um, that was my vice, smoking weed. And but as you get older, you have your kids, and you're growing up, and I had to become more responsible. And at some point, pretty much everybody is going to have to, unless you decide not to go the route that I went. If you decide to stay single your whole life, and you just kind of live it like one big party, be the Hugh Hefner of the world, then have at it, Haas. But that's not what I wanted going forward. And so I've realized that I've had to be more responsible. Well, that brings us to last Sunday night. We went to we've been kind of pushing it off for a little bit. Now, again, not because of our friends. We don't like hanging out with them, just because of who we are, right? And but eventually, we kind of sometimes we break down and we like to go out. So we went with our friends to a place called Ole Red here in Las Vegas. Fantastic little country music bar. They were having live music, which made it even better because now, granted, it was a cover band, but this dude and his band were phenomenal. I mean, they played everything from Garth Brooks to Hardy to Morgan Wallen to I even think there was some Sublime in there later in the evening. Like they were a very good band, and I really like good live bands. One of the reasons that I enjoyed 311's music for a long time, but one of the reasons they became one of my favorite bands is because I saw them live and I saw them put on a show, and it completely changed my idea of them. So it was a great time. We go out there. Trouble being, we didn't have anything to eat the whole day prior to this, right? We're running around doing chores, making sure Christopher's fed and everything before and changed and all this stuff before the babysitter comes, and we want to get all this stuff done. And in the mix of things, we just failed to eat anything for ourselves. So that was probably a sign to come. Now we had talked to our friends, and they had they had mentioned that they sell food at this place, but we didn't find out until we got there that, yeah, they sell food there. The problem is it's two separate parts. There's the bar and then there's the food area. Well, at the bar, I guess they don't sell the food there. Now, we would have had to make reservations and get in line. And I mean, we were there long enough. We probably could have made reservations, said we were going to go to the bar, just call us when it's our turn. But there was a line out the door to get into the food eating area, right? So there's a very good chance that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do that. And so, we being ourselves, we usually are very capable of going, having a drink or two, and then being able to just kind of chill for the rest of the night, and then kind of peace out when everybody else is wasted. Well, that was not the case this weekend. We go out to this bar, and the music's great. The band is fantastic. They have this cool little thing where it's 18 now. Okay, granted, it's like a 24 ounce or something. It's not like a normal glass or whatnot. That's like 8 ounces or something. But they're a little bit more expensive. Normally, it's about $18 for beer. But if you pay $20, then you get to keep the glass. And so we each got a couple of beers, and then they had this same thing with the shots, right? You buy these shots, you get to keep the glass that it comes in. And, we like to collect that kind of stuff, especially if it's the first time we've been to a place like that. So, we had a couple of drinks, we had a couple of shots. Before I know it, because it's basically a shot to the dome right away, I was pretty lit almost immediately after we got there. And that's to be honest with you, that's about the most that I remember of the night. But my wife and I, she really is the one that I kind of let take the lead, right? She's um she's a foreigner. She was not born and raised here in America. Most of our friends, because they meet them through me, she meets them through me, are born and raised here, and so. And I'm the more sociable one, really. Although she can be very sociable when she wants to, she's just very shy, right? Because she's kind of conscientious about the way she talks, because English is not her first language. So I'm usually the sociable one, but because she's a little bit more shy than I am, I usually let her take the lead. Hey, they want to do this. Do you want to do that? They want to go here. They want to go there. Now, once you start talking into getting into bars, like going from bar to bar, it's probably an indication that it's it's too much. But again, we don't go out very much, and we hadn't been out in a fairly long time, and so you know, despite our pretty responsible parentness, we got really irresponsible over the weekend, and we both got pretty drunk. We were walking from bar to bar. Apparently, we went to this restaurant that I don't even remember going to, and apparently, we took money out at one of the casinos because we were going to play some cards. But again, I was pretty much blacked out before all that happened, so I don't really remember any of it. Well, in the case of it, we lost our phones, and we both lost our phones. Now, luckily, mine had the location on, so I was able to track mine down. Somebody was nice enough to turn it into the lost and found at the casino that we were at. But we weren't able to find my wife's phone in the same location. So we're hoping that maybe, because we tried to call the phone, or a friend of mine tried to call my phone, and a dude answered, and so I think maybe part of it is he turned mine into the lost and found because he knew we were going to be able to track it, and he didn't want like any confrontations or anything like that. Now, I would assume that my wife and I's phone are both in the same place, but it's also very possible that my wife left her phone somewhere else, and the reason she had my phone is because she didn't know where her phone was, and we were trying to locate it with my phone. But she didn't have the location turned on because she wasn't driving that night. I was supposed to be the driver. And so we both ended up losing our phones. Luckily, I was able to find mine, although the stylus pen is missing from it. But whatever. We got the phone back, and it's crazy though because you don't really realize. At least I didn't realize because my wife is always kind of. I don't want to say it's nagging. It's not really nagging, but she's always saying, "Hey, you're on your phone all the time," and I didn't realize how much everything is on that phone until I didn't have it for a day and a half, and so it was kind of we were both kind of freaking out because after a day of not having her phone, she realized that yeah, she's telling me to get off my phone all the time too, but she really relies on her phone as well, and that's just kind of the society we've become, right? And so, we both got to talking about it, and we both kind of came to the agreement that, hey, like it's fun to go out and get obliterated on a once in a while basis, but we should probably watch ourselves because I mean I don't. Thank God my wife is as cool, calm, as collect as she is because she was somehow able to navigate this casino hotel that she had never been to before. We were able to find our car. She was able to go down this. I mean, the exit to this parking lot is just crazy. And the only reason I know is because we had to go back there to get my phone, right? And so she was able to navigate through this parking lot. She was able to navigate through downtown Las Vegas, the Strip, which is always busy, and then get on the freeway and get home without crashing into anything, you know. And we were able to make it home in time to before the babysitter had to leave, and so my kudos to her for being as responsible as she is, and that's why I don't care if she wants to take time out to go smoke because she's clearly more responsible than I am. And but it made me think, and it wanted me to talk about this because I know a lot of people out there that are younger parents, and I know a lot of parents that are stoner parents, and I've got nothing against it as long as you realize that that's got to take a step back, you know, like you have to be able to be responsible at the same time as being stoned. And my wife is very capable of it. I was pretty capable of it outside of the fact that, you know, I would cough at night and have to, you know, get up and go into the bathroom and kind of hawk up some loogies to help me. So you know, I stopped mine more for the health, but you know, the truth is, alcoholism runs in my family, and you know, I've seen. Now, I'm not saying my dad was an alcoholic, but I've seen the way he gets when he drinks. I know what my aunt and my uncle, who are alcoholic, like diehard alcoholics, I know how they are, and that's not what I want to become, you know. And so, um, it was a kind of a real, I don't want to say eye opener, but you know, it was a pretty come to Jesus moment for me, and I just wanted to share it with you guys because, you know, that's not the type of parent that you should be, in my opinion. And again, if you can get a babysitter, go out, have a couple of drinks, come back and be perfectly fine, have at it, Hoss. That's great. Normally, my wife and I can do that, but it is come to me to be a you know, to be a realization that there's that potential chance that you know, another Sunday night happens like that, and for me, it's not really worth the risk to do that to my family. You know, if I what if I get, you know, caught drinking and driving and I get thrown in jail, you know, or you know, what if I get into a huge accident and heaven forbid something happens to my wife or I mean, we only have the one car, so if I destroy the car, then we're carless, you know. And so um from a standpoint in my experience, it was a good experience because I had a lot of fun and a great place. I fully plan on going back to it, but I also plan on going back there to, you know, eat at the restaurant and not just go out and get shit faced like I did. Um, Now I'm not saying that I'll probably, you know, never drink again, but I do, you know, it's a good reminder to me, and that's why I'm bringing it up to you guys. A good reminder that anything can happen, you know, especially if you have alcoholism that or drug addiction that runs in your family. There's that, no matter how small percentage of a chance, there's that opportunity that something bad might happen. And you know, as a parent, I have to remember that when I go out, regardless of where I'm going, why I'm going, how long I'm going to be there, who's driving, who's not driving, all that kind of stuff. I have to remember that it's not just about me anymore. You know, I have an almost 2-year old here at home that needs a dad and needs a mom, and so it's one of those things where it was a, again, fun night, but a good life lesson for me. And that's what I wanted to share with you guys in case you find yourself kind of in the same situation. Because I know exactly what it's like to, you know, go out and be the sociable person. That was half my life before I decided to kind of clean up the act and become a family man. You know, like that's still a good portion of my life. Again, I'm the sociable one. I'm the one that if we have to go out, if we go into somewhere, if we're hanging out with friends, I'm the one that keeps the conversation going, you know. And again, it's not anything to do with my wife. She's just, you know, very conscientious. She's shy because of how she speaks, and that's, you know, it's totally understandable because again, English is not her first language, you know. And so, um, you know, my warning to you guys is we're not teenagers anymore. Maybe some of you are, but maybe some of you are, but I'm not, you know, and I'm not a teenager anymore. I'm not, you know, I'm not going to the gym 2 times a day every, you know, 5-6 days a week like I used to. Like I'm not that guy anymore, and I have to remember that because again, it's not just about me. It's about my son, and it's about my wife, and it's about the future kids that we have, and and so take it from me, you know, have fun. A good friend of mine, Scavenger, you know, he told me, he's like, hey, whenever you get a chance to go out with your wife, you got to take it, and that is also true because again, family comes first. You know, like we can't be going out every night. One, we can't afford the babysitter, But two, like it's not good for our child to be parentless every night, and so when we go out for several hours and we come back and he's all excited to see us, it's 6 hours to him is like 60 days to us, like he doesn't understand the perception of time, and he just knows that we're usually there and then we're not. And so take my advice, have fun, but do me a favor and be careful, make sure you've planned your escape route, and enjoy yourself, but again, just be careful. You guys will be just fine. And that'll be this will be commercial break number one. Any Nespresso lovers out there, that's what I happen to be drinking today. If you happen to be a coffee maker, again, by all means, hit your boy up with a sponsorship. I'll drink your coffee and I'll tell people that I drink your coffee. And I will tell people that I drink your coffee. Especially if it's good coffee. Especially if it's good coffee. All right, now we'll get into the gaming section. So now that my little story is over, we'll get into our next section of today's podcast. We are going to be talking about, and we'll probably be talking about Final Fantasy VII for a little while now, because I did my initial review after we finished the game. That is up here that's on the YouTube channel. You can check it out if you want to. But I kind of want to do some deep dives into it as well, just to kind of reiterate what I really feel about this game. And I had said that initially after I played it, is probably the best game I've ever played, and even a week later, I still do think that this is probably the greatest game I've ever played. There's some really good ones out there, and some of my personal favorites: Chrono Trigger, Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, the original Final Fantasy VII, even as recently as last year. Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom was phenomenal, but there was really something about this game that stood out, and it's not just the surface things that I talk about, like the gameplay, the story, and whatnot. But like today, what I want to focus on is the environments, right? So you go to several different regions. You've got Junin, you've got Corel / Costa del Sol, you've got Nibelheim. You've got Gongaga, you've got and Cosmo Canyon area. They are really, really fascinating locations, because not only are they very distinct from each other, but there's also like a history behind each of them, right? And so you begin the game, you come out into the Junon region, and it's not just Junon that you're looking at, right? You're looking at the surrounding area with it as well. And what's unique about this specific area is the militaristic aspect of it, right? You have the gray chocobo, very military colors, right? Black, gray, red. You have very, very militaristic feel to your chocobos. They also have the thick claws that allow you to climb up walls and such, so it very matching chocobos for the region. But you also have this trash that's just kind of scattered throughout the region before you even get to Junon, right? And everybody knows Junon is the military base. It's where the giant cannon is. It's where you have the parade in the Fantastic City that's surrounded by just officers and sergeants and all sorts of military. But the area as well, as you go through the area, you just see little heaps of garbage on the ground that are all like former tanks and military equipment. When you get out to like where the water line is, you see destroyed tankers and battleships and whatnot. And so you get a really good feel of what's left over from the previous war between the Republic and Shinra, and you can just feel the conflict that was there. You also get it through the interactions with the people that live in these areas that, hey, they reminisce on the past, and They feel like Shinra has come in and spit all over that history, right? And you see that in the garbage. You see that in the rundown shacks that people are hanging out at. You see that where people have created ships into little areas of living and whatnot. And so you get the history of the post-war aftermath in Junon, and it's a very distinct feature compared to the rest of the regions that you go to. After you go to the military, you go to Costa del Sol. It's almost like a celebration, right? You were able to achieve victory. You got through the military spot, and you were able to achieve victory, and now you're here in Costa del Sol, which is a beach paradise. It's obviously it's overrun by Shinra, but you can see what they're going for because it's just a small boat ride across the sea, and then all of a sudden it's a vacation haven, right? You're in Junon, you're doing your job, you get your 2-week vacation every year. Where do you go? You go to Costa del Sol. It's just across the water. It's almost completely, separate from the Junon area outside of the fact that Shinra owns basically everything in Costa del Sol. But it's a complete 180, right? You have the Junon military after war, aftermath kind of slum, and then you come and you're in Costa del Sol, and it's this home away from home, and it's this beautiful beach with all this fun activities to do and everything, and you're in your beach attire instead of in your business casuals, and it's just a huge contrast between the two. And then you continue your adventure, and in that same area, just across the mountain, is the poorest region in the country, right? You're in Corel, who again reminisces from the old days, right? We were happy mining, we were happy mining coal. We didn't want this new age technology to come in, and we were coerced by this company that then turned their back on us, and now we live in even more despair, right? Like we might not have been super prosperous, but at least we were happy being coal miners. And now not only are we, poor, but we also live in this desperate area where it's just nothing but garbage and leftover trash and sick people and just abject poverty, but being towered over by one of the greatest places on earth, right? The Disney World, the Disneyland of the Final Fantasy VII world. You've got the gold saucer just towering over the most poor people on the planet. And it's a great aspect of capitalistic society, right? Because I've always tried to explain this. The biggest issue with capitalism is the pie is only so big. If I want 80% of the pie, that means everybody else has to share 20%, right? So you're going to have super wealth income inequality. You can't have the super rich without the super poor because again, there's only so much pie. You can't expand the pie. You can't make it bigger. You can't make your share bigger without making the other share smaller. And so it's this perfect dichotomy of what becomes from this capitalistic society. And we got to remember that, Final Fantasy VII is kind of it's satire is the wrong word for it, but it's morally speaking to the end of World War II and the development of this capitalistic society that in a lot of ways feels forced upon these people to change their traditions, change the way that they live and their economy runs, to adapt to this Shinra way of living, whether you want to or not. Whether you want to change, whether you want to adapt. Maybe they didn't. Maybe Corel didn't want a gold saucer there. Maybe gold saucer would have been better if it was closer to Costa del Sol, right? But then you don't have you have too friendly parks close to each other. And so, capitalism is trying to, not just grab more share of the pie, but you can only force that so much on people. Maybe they go to Costa del Sol, maybe they never make it to Golden Saucer. And the Golden Saucer's got a great history that you learn of in this game. It talks about how Dio actually wanted to run a museum, right? Here you go. Let's preserve our history. Let's preserve what happened when during the Great War of the Republic in Shinra, what happened afterwards, and what happens? It fails miserably, right? Now, maybe it's because, a lot of the poorest people couldn't afford to go to the museum. Maybe they weren't interested in reliving the bad moments and the good moment over the good moments. Maybe Shinra doesn't want people to remember anything about the war, and so everything they did, they tried to close up shop, right? They wanted it to fail on purpose. And then Dio has this great idea where he creates the Golden Saucer. Everybody loves it, right? It's the Disneyland, Disney World of Final Fantasy VII. Of course, at the very bottom, you have again, up at the top, you have the top. You have the rich of the rich. You have the elites, the ones that can afford to go to this place. And what do you have at the bottom? More abject poverty, right? It's the jail cell. It's the leftovers. It's the hooligans. It's the thugs, right? It's the people that are detrimental to society. You have the top of the top at the top and the bottom of the bottom at the bottom, right? And perfect juxtaposition of how society treats consumerism, elitism, haves versus have-nots. We can't, most of the visitors, like at Disney World and Disneyland, you have to have some money to go there. It's not cheap to go to Disneyland. It's not cheap to go to Disney World. And if you can't stay more than a day or two, you're probably not going to get to experience everything. And if it's anything like me, I only ever got to go one time, right? Like we went, and that was the only time we went. We spent all our money going that one time. We're going to make this the great time. And so, again, you have these people that are up there. They're giving away their lives, and then what happens? They end up having to resort to crime, to pick up the pieces, and then they get shot down to the bottom. Now, the one thing that I do actually really enjoy, the one critique of capitalism that the Final Fantasy VII crew does seem to really agree with is meritocracy. You get sent down to the bottom. How do you get back up? Win your race, bro. If you can win the race, if you can win the chocobo races, you can get back into that elite status, and that is one thing that every pro-capitalist has said from the beginning of capitalism to now is it's pick yourself up by the bootstraps and move yourself forward. And if you can do that, you can really move up and up and up in society. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why I don't think that's as possible as it was, say, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. There's a ton of reasons why that it's not as feasible to just pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and why more and more and more and more of the wealthy families in this country are inherited wealth and not new money, right? Now maybe every decade, maybe every 20 years, we do kind of have an industry that explodes, a newer industry, right? Video games, technology, computers, cell phones, that kind of thing. When new technology comes out, there's going to be those people that, come from a garage and create Windows, right? But that's not who's going to take over said industry most of the time. Look at us now. So yeah, we have Bill Gates is arguably the richest man in the world. He developed Microsoft from his garage, and now he's buying World Health Organizations and stuff. But what happened when the internet was developed, right? Our government gave this technology to already established companies like Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, all these companies that already had market share were then given this new technology to profit off the new technology. So, new money, yes, happens. Hip hop is a great example. You know, you have music in general is usually a great example. You have these hip music, and then 20 years later, the kids don't like country music anymore, so they develop rock, right? Then they don't like regular rock and roll like Elvis Presley. They like hard rock and roll, right? Like Led Zeppelin, and such and such. And so there are moments in time when you can pick yourself up from where you're born and move up into that upper echelon. But the truth is, it's not. It doesn't happen as often anymore, and it doesn't happen to as many people anymore. You know, when hip hop started, it was mostly poor black kids. And then what happened? Well, the music industry took over, right? And now there's what are called studio rappers, right? You know, these are people that never seen a gun in their life until they got into a studio, and then they have a fake gun in their waistband because they're supposed to have a gun, and that's hip hop, right? But you know, but it's not it's not the same like it was definitely in the 50s, even further back from that. And so Corel and the Golden Saucer and Costa del Sol, and you know, the desert prison, I guess is what they call it. Sorry, lack of, I forgot exactly what it's called. I think it's called the desert prison. Is a perfect example of all phases of society, right? You have the elites, you have the poors, you have the thugs, you have the redeemers. It's just a great mini look at what can happen with capitalism and how capitalism really is. Then you get into Gangaga, which is this really lush greenland. You go from this like just unbelievable desert area, right, where it doesn't look like there's anything around. You've got semis that are just crashed into mountains and stuff, and there's just nothing but barren wasteland. You cross the river, and you're in this just most luscious green forest area that you've ever seen, right? Couple of reasons why. The vegetation just happens to be really good, but there's stuff there. There's the Gangaga mushrooms that everybody loves. And we're talking, when we say everybody, not just the people from Gangaga, but you've got Shinra, Midgar, you know, Wutai has probably heard of these mushrooms. So there's a resource there that keeps the money coming in. And so you've got this very lush area because, you know, even the Shinra military doesn't want to destroy this area because they love the mushrooms, right? And then lo and behold, you have Cisne pops up out of nowhere. We have no idea what happens to her at the end of Crisis Core, and here she is. She comes back to Gangaga. Now, she's a fantastic character in my opinion, because you don't really get to know about her, right? Even if you do all the side quests for her, she gives you an opportunity to ask one question, and if you ask that question, what are you really? She ignores it completely. She's like, "You're not. I can't tell you this right now," and she just doesn't answer the picture. But she's clearly there in a way to not just help the Gangaga people. Obviously, she would be there. She went to go help Zack because that's what the Turks wanted, but she doesn't agree with turning him over to Shinra. And so she goes to find him to save Zack from his ultimate demise at the end of Crisis Core, only to see that he's already passed. And so maybe she has a feeling that maybe she's wrong. Maybe she does overcome the tragedy that befalls him. And so she goes to Gangaga, obviously thinking that's where Zack would most likely go, right? Because, I mean, she knows that he's got a girlfriend and all this stuff, but his parents are in Gangaga. He's trying to get away from Shinra. So where else would he go? He would go to Gangaga. But at the same time, she's also maintaining these Shinra training, these Turk training grounds, if you go through the proto-relic stuff. So is she really there to help Zack get away, or is she there to help Shinra disguise what's happened at Gangaga, track anything that might happen with Zack or with Cloud or any random former soldier members or anybody that might happen to come looking to see what the Turks are and what they represent. She's there at the end when you do the 4 proto relics. She's the one that comes in to the military base. Obviously, she's still got Turk credentials. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to get in to the Turk facility, right? And so you have this area that still has some history to it, but it's got something that also it keeps it in a state of want, right? Resources are some of the biggest reasons why we have wars in the world today. And if you have resources, like Angaga clearly has resources, they have this lush forest, right? And the vegetation is great. So it can't just be the mushrooms, even though that's what they're known for. But they also have these hidden training facilities as well. And so you have reasons to want to keep this area nice and clean, but at the same time, you don't want too many eyes prying in. That's why the airport's been destroyed. That's why there's really no port to get into the area outside of the one little port that also shares a port with the Corel region, you know? And so it's this fascinating dichotomy. You've gone so far, starting out in Junon, we've gone from the aftermath of war to the victory of winning to the disparity of forcing a new culture on people that don't want to change. And now you have the resources that people want. You have the training facilities that you don't want people to find out about. You have this region that you want to keep open because you're hoping that this or that might happen, but you also don't want too many people asking questions, you know? And that's why you have to fly over to Cosmo Canyon. Cosmo Canyon, who's been pretty much kept away from all of this stuff because of where they're geographically located. And you have these birds that, you know, the flight birds, right? And they float and they can fly on streams and stuff like that. It's a very remote area to get to. And when you're at the top of a mountain, not many people are going to, let alone attack, let alone be successful in an attack. So they're protected by the area that they're in. Now, obviously, there's ways to get what you want out of it. Right? Red 13 is kidnapped by Hojo at one point. And so it's not completely devoid of any militaristic ambitions from either of the outside forces, but its geographical location allows it to be one of the less pertinent places to attack, right? And it also happens to be a very spiritual area, right? Because it's so far out of everything else. People go there, and then you have this beautiful night sky, right? Because you're at the top of this mountain, and so you can see all the stars in the sky for miles and miles and miles. And because of this, people believe that there's more star showers, there's more cultural relevancies being told through the astronomical geographic location, right? And so people have a spiritual awakening there because it's like going to a campground, right? You're away from the technology of modern day. For the most part, obviously, there's still some there. Budahagen. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name. You know, clearly has some technological relevance with the telescope that they have and the Mako reader that he's invented, right? And so, it's got such an attraction to the live stream that it brings people there to rejuvenate their soul, essentially. And because of the geographical location of where it's at, it allows them to escape most of the technological advances of modern day. And because of that, they get away from a lot of their daytime drama, for a lack of a better word, right? And so they can have this room to have these spiritual enlightenments. And it really makes it just a fantastic self-contained region. And then finally you get into Nibelheim, which we've only ever seen in flashback up until now. And what have we seen in flashback? We've seen it be destroyed, burnt to the ground by Sephiroth. And then you get there, this whole place is just rebuilt from the ground up. And now Shinra is using it as a Mako poisoning rehab, right? And so it's part, hey, maybe we kind of fucked up by doing this to certain people. Maybe it's a PR campaign so people can go, oh, well, anybody who's been exposed to Mako because of our reactors, we can send them to Nibelheim and we can rehabilitate them. We can make them better. And that's the front of Nibelheim. But then you delve deeper into it and you've got the Shinra mansion where their basement is clearly hiding some who knows what, right? You've got Hojo experiments that go deep, delving into the bottom of that mansion, which is a much bigger mansion than even we know from the original. In the original, we only go as far as the library. But even in the library, you see the Mako tanks that we know Cloud and Zack spent time in. We know that, and Vincent is there. Vincent, who seems to have been, what, as far as we've seen to know, had been asleep from the time of, his time, when his little confrontation with Hojo, to basically when Cloud comes to wake him up. Even so, sleeping through the events of Crisis Core, but he knows what these pods are. And so he's been keeping an eye on this stuff for a long time, waiting for the right time to maybe expose Shinra, maybe not. Who's to say? Now, I personally believe that he's been waiting to get his revenge on Hojo, and which would obviously follow the same line as exposing Shinra. But Hojo is still committing these science projects, right? In the Nibelheim reactor, which is the only one still going outside of Midgar. Gangaga's been destroyed. Corel has been destroyed. And so Nibelheim, the original reactor, is still the one that Hojo has this relishment of. And they're using this rehabilitation center for Mako poisoning to mask that. You go to Nibelheim and you see these doctors and these psychologists and all these people working to help these Mako poisoned individuals. You think that, hey, maybe Shinra is really regretful of what they've brought, and they are trying to do a kindness to the people that they have harmed, only to realize that this is just surface level stuff. And really, I mean, it's not hard to fathom that if these Mako poisoned, numbered black robes delve a little too deep, that Hojo wouldn't trap them in one of these reactor pods and see what he can turn them into, right? Like, it doesn't seem that irresponsible. It doesn't seem that far outlandish of an idea, especially since we've seen him earlier turn these people, use his creatures to turn these people into new creatures just to see what happens. And so, you're talking about mega corporations that are pretending to do the right thing only as a mask for these atrocities that they are actually committing. And so, the regions are another reason why Final Fantasy VII has come to be such a fantastic Rebirth, specifically. Sorry, has come across as such a fantastic game, because you're not just going to these different areas, but you're experiencing the history of what happened in the Final Fantasy VII world through the use of these different regions, and it just brings more layers and more layers and more layers into why this is such a great game. And that's we'll get into more of it. I want to talk about the battle system. I want to talk about the lore. But first and foremost, on the surface level, even if you are one of those people that don't really pay attention to the dialogue as you go along, you can feel the history and the storytelling just by what region you're in. And that, in my opinion, is really what makes a good game great. The ability to tell your story without just telling your story. That's, that's what makes an okay game okay, is if you have a good story and you're willing to sit there and pay attention to it all the time, and you're willing to play it several times to really understand what they're saying. But if you can go into a game and just feel the lore because of where you're at in a game, it takes it that next step, right? It takes it to the next level, making it better than what it should be. And now when I say, obviously we haven't finished it yet, I'm looking at Remake and Rebirth as, I know they're separate games technically, but to me they're the same game, right? And Remake is a great precursor to Rebirth, and then Rebirth really fleshes it out. But again, we'll get into for the next few next few podcasts anyway. I really want to talk about Final Fantasy VII, and so we'll get into all this. But I wanted to start with the regions and the development of the regions, because they tell a story within a story just by where you happen to be, and it's absolutely fantastic. And I've said this before, and I said this in the review. It is a game that I had high expectations for, and it still exceeded those expectations. And that is something that happens once, twice, if you're lucky, 3 times in a lifetime. Like, there's very rarely does something that has such high expectations come out and exceed those expectations. It's getting rarer and rarer that they even meet expectations, let alone exceed them, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth did. And so it is one of the best games I've ever played. It's easily my favorite game right now, and clearly it's going to be very, very hard to beat, in my opinion, as the game of the year this year. All right, well, this is going to be a little bit longer episode, so we're just going to go right into the sports segment. All right, so today in our sports segment, I kind of want to I got to be the bearer of bad news. I was very confident in my fantasy hockey team. I thought for sure I was one of the 2 best teams, if not the best team in the league. And lo and behold, 182 and a half points later, I get knocked out in the first round. I ended up losing by, I think, 2.5 points. I think it was 184 and a half to 182. I think was what the final score was. And again, just like in basketball, had I played any of the other 2 guys in the other semifinal, I would have cruised to the finals, because I think the guy who won ended up with like 142 points or something. And so, pretty disappointing. Not surprised that I'm kind of dominating in the third place game. I'm up, I think, 30 or something like that right now. Now, there is still, I think, 2 more days, because I think hockey ends on the 18th. We're recording this on the 16th. But I'm not going to lie, I was pretty disappointed. And mostly what makes me disappointed is the fact that I still had, so we have a limited amount of moves we can make per matchup. And I still had almost all of my moves still available for the last day. But I was pretty confident going into that last game. And again, it becomes one of those things where it's like, I don't want to drop any of these guys that have got me here on the assumption that I do win this game and have to play next week. Now, if I would have dropped those guys and I would have lost anyway, I wouldn't have given a shit, because, I mean, who cares about third, fourth place? It's about winning, and it's about winning only. But had I made a couple of moves and made it into the finals, there's a good chance that I might not have been able to re-pick those guys up for the final match. And, I lost a couple of really good players. But honestly, I had a healthy team. Most of my team were in real life vying for specific playoff spots. The Red Wings for sure are, they have 1 more game left. I think it's tomorrow in the regular season. And, they have to win to have a chance to get into the playoffs. Right now, they're tied for the second wild card in the East. But if, right now they're the odd man out. So even though they're tied for points, The tiebreaker goes to the other team, the Washington Capitals, right now. So they're in win or go home mode, right? Which is pretty much exactly what you want going into the playoffs in any fantasy league, because you want your star players to play like star players. And so I was very confident going into it. And, it's tough when you score 182 points and lose, like, I mean, we're looking at it's normally a 7 day week. In this case, it's a 11 or 12 day week. And I mean, they haven't scored that many points yet, so to go in there and score 182 when on average I think most people score about 140 to 150, and lose is a fucking heartbreaker, man. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's heartbreaking. And again, maybe I make a couple of moves, maybe I get into the final, but who knows? Maybe I drop the wrong players and they end up going and they get picked up by the other team that's in the final, and they go off and they have their best week of the season. And so, you it's that fine line between knowing who to drop, when to drop, why to drop. And I was really confident going into that last day, and so I didn't make any moves, and I ended up losing by 2.5. I could have easily picked up a player or two and probably gotten that 2.5 points and played in the final. Now they're going at it pretty good. Again, we're on day 11 or 12 of a 12-day week. They're at a roughly 170, 175 points. But again, 182 is usually enough to win. And so now we're at another this is twice in 4 leagues. Now, the crazy thing is, so I won the football league, right? I'm the defending fantasy football champion, and to be at the end all be all, that's really the only sport that matters. Fantasy football is the only sport that matters, really. But of the 4 sports that I've now played in the last year, um, I was the division winner in baseball, got knocked out in the first round. I was the division winner here in hockey, scored 182 points and got knocked out in the first round. And it's a bummer that you have such great seasons and then you turn around and just get booted, after one game. Crazy enough, my wife actually was the division winner in football and she got knocked out in the first round. I ended up finishing, like, I don't know, like, I think third or something in my division and ended up winning. I took on, I think I beat, I think I was probably, so we had 8 teams make the playoffs. I think I was probably maybe the 6th seed, because I think I took on the 3 seed first, and then the 2 seed. But when I got into the final, I think it was I'm pretty sure the girl that I faced, Maddie. I actually kind of think she might have been like maybe the 7th or the 8th, maybe like the 7th seed or something like that. So it's just kind of funny how you can have these great seasons and then you get into the playoffs and it's end all be all. Um, I read this tweet and I still feel it's the complete opposite, but this tweet was, you know, getting into the playoffs takes skill, winning the playoffs is all about luck. And to a certain extent, sure, that might be how it seems because, again, your number one team, first round of the playoffs, you get beat by, the 4 seed or the 8 seed or the whatever seed. Um, but the reason I don't believe that is because, I mean, you have to make it through 14, 15 games in the regular season. In the case of hockey, basketball, and baseball, you're looking at 20 to 25 games of the regular season without your best players getting hurt. And so that, in my opinion, is more luck than a 2 week span, 3 week span where, if you did make it to the playoffs, it's most likely because your guys are playing really well and they're healthy. And so, then it boils down to, okay, what position do I need to upgrade this week? And so that's what takes the skill, right? Not just placing and I live by the rule, play who got you there. But that only works in a certain extent. So like, and so you do have to find these 1 or 2 players every week in the playoffs and that's the skilled part right there. Finding the guys that have good matchups that nobody else is thinking is going to have a good matchup, picking them up, put them in your starting roster. Starting Puka Nakua over Cooper Cup. And as crazy as that is to sound, like Cooper was still the number one last year, and even though Puka clearly had the better year, and that was a lot of it was because Cooper was out the first 6-7 games or whatever it was, but he had by that time built up a rapport with Matthew Stafford. Now again, when you're talking receivers and stuff, you're not only looking at receiver health, but you're also looking at quarterback health, right? So you have to make it through a 14, 15, or a 20 to 25 game season without your best players getting hurt or the people that make them better getting hurt. And so it is disheartening, it is a huge bummer that we weren't able to win, and I'm pretty bummed about it. I'm wish I would have made those one or two moves, but hey, it is what it is. You put up 182 points. You put up a hell of a fight, I mean, you can only go toe to toe for so long, and then there has to be a winner. So, pretty bummed, but it is what it is, and we'll learn from it. We'll move forward. On the flip side, we've just started baseball. Oh, well, before we get into this, I do want to credit my friend Boogie. He won the basketball league. He's currently winning the hockey league. He's probably going to win. He's up pretty big, I think. I want to say actually maybe it's tightened up a little bit, but he was still up probably 10 or 15 with only a day or two left to go. So there's a good chance that he wins both leagues this year, which is, I mean, crazy good. Especially now he's a pretty familiar basketball guy. But from what I understand, he doesn't really know much about hockey. So kudos to him being able to. He also had the best record in the regular season. He was the 1 seed. I was the 2. So kudos to him for having a good draft, even though he doesn't know a whole lot about hockey. And definitely kudos to him if he ends up winning both basketball and hockey. But on the flip side, we're off to a really good start in baseball. Again, baseball's my number 2. Football, baseball, hockey, basketball. I think we had a really good draft. I ended up being the number 1 overall pick. I went with Ronald Acuna Jr., the defending MVP, NL MVP, who he's been off to a pretty decent start. I wouldn't say great. Nothing, it doesn't look like he's going to have another 40 homers, 40 steals season like he did last year when he won the MVP, but I'm sure he'll be serviceable enough. I didn't get any of the other players from my team last year that I really wanted to keep. Freddie Freeman, he was going to be a first round pick. In the snake draft, it's hard to really get anybody that is a really good player like that, because not only do you pick first, but then you have to wait for everybody else to pick twice before you get to pick again. So I'm very satisfied with my Ronald Acuna Jr. pick at 1 overall. And then we put a limit on the amount of moves you can make per week. So like last year, I went hitter heavy, everyday player heavy, because we didn't have a cap on ad drops. We didn't have a cap on innings pitched. And so I kind of, let the pitchers go, knowing that my whole plan was to then just add and drop pitchers pretty much every fucking day. And it worked for a good 2/3 of the season, and then everybody else kind of caught on to what I was doing, and it became kind of a free for all on add and drops. So we changed it this year. So I went a little heavier on pitchers. Again, Acuna Jr. was my first overall pick, and then when it came to the back of the second, early third, I went pitcher. Zach Wheeler from I believe he's an Arizona Diamondback. And then Luis Castillo from the Seattle Mariners. Now they've been good. They have not been second and third round picks good. But I have been the leading scorer in 2 of the first 3 weeks of the season. I'm 2-1. I had a real big dip in that second week. I don't know what happened, but it doesn't matter. Because we, first week scored almost 300 points. We were the high scorer of the week. The week that just ended on Sunday, I scored I think 294, which was again the high score of the week. So 2 of the first 3 weeks I've been the high scorer in the league, and I've managed to find some real gems. So Spencer Steer, he's technically, I guess, the left fielder for the Cincinnati Reds. He was a rookie last year. He's a second-year player this year, and he is on fire. And the whole reason I drafted him is because he's eligible at first, third, and outfield, I think. So, he was a bench player at first who has blossomed into an everyday starter for me. Logan Hopp, the catcher from the Angels, went undrafted. I was able to pick him up. He's like the second or third best catcher in the league right now. I think he's 8th best batting average in the majors right now. And then Cole Reagans, who was supposed to be a relief pitcher for the Kansas City Royals, ends up being a starter, and he's put three straight 15-point fantasy outings for me as the starting pitcher for the Royals. And so being able to pick up these gems has really solidified my team, because it's only a matter of time again before the Braves start getting hot. It's still technically cold outside, so if you're in the Northeast, or if you're in the like the Northeast, like Detroit or Boston, it's still cold, so the ball's not traveling as far. They're still postponing games due to weather and stuff right now, but come June, July, when the weather's hot and the sky is clear, that ball is going to travel, and so my hitters, I'm hoping, will start to come around because of that, and so it should be a good time. Hopefully my pitchers can keep doing what they're doing. I have faith in Zach Wheeler. He's a good ace. Luis Castillo, he had a pretty decent season last year. Kind of finished a little rough, but I think he'll be okay. But I wanted to get like a significant number of starters, because again, you can only add and drop so many times per matchup. So I went a little bit more pitcher heavy this year than I did last year for sure. But again, leading scorer 2 of the first 3 weeks of the season, sitting at top of the division at 2-1, and things are looking pretty early. So again, baseball, 162 games. So we got a long way ahead of us. They don't call it a marathon for nothing. But knock on wood, knock knock knock, we're off to a good start, and I hope to have some fun this season with baseball, and hopefully we'll get a little bit luckier than we did last year when we went out in the first round, and then before we know it, football will be back on, and again, football is really the only one that matters. But yeah, football is really the only one that matters. All right. Still running a little bit long, so we'll just go right into our cinematique segment. We talk about Fallout. All right, so heading into our last segment of the day, I want to talk about the Fallout TV series on Prime Video. I do want to put out a little spoiler alert, because I'm going to talk about some stuff that happens later in the series. I should call it a season, because again, at the end, it clearly looks like they're hoping to have at least another season. But here's your fair warning on spoilers. I'm going to talk about some stuff that isn't exposed right away. But by the time this drops, you'll have had, I think, a little over 2 weeks to watch this show by now. So chances are, if you haven't seen it all yet, it's probably not going to be a spoiler for you, because maybe it's probably not that important. But I do want to talk about the Fallout TV series. IGN gave it a 9 out of 10. It is not a 9 out of 10. On the surface alone, it is a solid 5 out of 10. Realistically, it's more so like maybe a 3.5, 4 out of 10. But the way that they handle Vault Tech and the corporate fascism take in the show, I think deserves to give it another point. And this is because this is something that I've talked about a lot recently, but I've always kind of talked about it throughout my whole gaming channel in relation to real life. This idea that we fought World War II to stop the growth of fascism, only to then bring that fascism to our country, and that's exactly what Voltec represents in the TV show, and I really respected and liked that part of it. You find out throughout the show that Voltec uh, is worried that peace negotiations are actually starting to take place between China and the U.S. And it looks like the war is probably going to end sooner rather than later. And so now their entire investment in these vaults has basically been teetering on the edge of failure and destruction. And so they team up with the other major corporations, West Tech, um, Robco, and some of the others that are eluding me right now. But they team up to kind of plot against the American people and ensure that these vaults, excuse me, these vaults make their money back. Right, their investment is well worth it, and they play out. It's a little strange because it starts off a lot like Fallout 3, where your dad, but instead of your dad just running away from the vault, he's actually kidnapped by some raiders. But then later in the season, you find out that these people that have been the overseers of Vault 33, which is like the main vault that's in the show, Lucy, the one of the main characters, I'll say probably the main character. Although there's an argument for the ghoul as well, but I would say Lucy McLean is probably the lead character of the show. She's from Vault 33. Her dad is the overseer that gets kidnapped by the raiders, and so her adventure is to travel out into the wasteland and find and bring back her father, only to find out that her father actually was Fallout Ford. Way back before the bombs dropped, he was cryogenically frozen in Vault 31, which is connected to 32 and 33, with this idea that Vault Tech would just outweight the rest of civilized world until they're the only people left, and then they can go to the surface and they can create a new America in whatever image they want. And so this, corporate fascism take, I think, is really the bright spot, if not maybe the only only really good thing about this show. Because the truth of the matter is everything else is pretty mediocre at best. Now Walton Goggins is absolutely phenomenal as the ghoul. He's easily the best actor in the show, and it's not even close. Everybody else mediocre at best, and it looks like no one. It looks like most of these people have never acted before a day in their lives. Right? They're just like kind of they just come across as kind of these like clueless, no motivation, no direction, no idea of what they're embodying. It starts with Lucy. She's the vault dweller that we're supposed to be relating to, that we follow out onto the wasteland for the first time. So you're talking about soul survivor embodiment. You know what I mean? You are the person, right, that is supposed to be who the crowd relates to. And for most of the time, she comes across as just kind of way in over her head, with no real idea of what it would be like to live your whole life in a vault and then come out into onto civilization for the first time. At first, it actually really comes across as genuine, right? Her naivete. She's grown up in this vault where everything is okie dokie and kosher and everybody loves everybody and all this stuff. And then she goes out into the wasteland and she tries to use these techniques that she's learned in the vault, only to realize no one gives a shit about the golden rule on the wasteland, and it's everybody for themselves, and everybody hates everybody, and no one trusts anybody. Uh, and when it looks like she finally gets it, she then immediately turns around and she's back to this just naive imbecile that honestly probably wouldn't last more than a day and a half out in the wasteland, you know. And it comes through in her acting a lot. It again, it looks like she's maybe this is the only thing she's ever acted in. I can't imagine that that's true because everybody seems to know who Ella Purnell is. I had never heard of her before. But you know, she doesn't embody this character change of realization. And it just doesn't seem like she would survive in the wasteland ever. And so it's kind of hard to follow her because she keeps doing these things that are like, haven't you fucking got this yet? What are you doing? Like and again, I know she's grown up with these moral integrity rules and whatnot, and she tries to stay true to herself. But there's just times when it's like, look, that's not how this works. Like that's not what you're doing. And if you really did that, you're going to get taken advantage of, and you're probably going to end up dead somewhere in a ditch, like pretty easy to figure this out. And so, and then, you know, and then her brother is kind of this like clueless, depressed nerd that goes in to, you know, find out the truth about Vault 31, and then he gets locked in Vault 31, and we don't know whatever happens to him, assuming, you know, it's to be assumed that you know, he probably goes into his dad's cryogenic freezer and you know, passes out so he doesn't die, I guess. I don't know, but you know, like he's able to hack into the overseer's computer, and it was a cool little shout out to the show, the screen they showed when he does the hacking. But he's able to just he's able to hack this. He's able to guess the password on the very first try. Like he just, oh, let me that's it, boom, done. Like what? Like you don't. If you're trying to make this like a real show, right? If you're trying to bring some legitimacy to this show, you should have had at least one wrong guess, right? Or preferably add a little suspense to it and have him have 3 wrong guesses and he gets it on the last try. But no, he just, oh, that looks right. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, look at that. I'm a fucking genius. You know, and then he goes in to this vault, which is only maintained by a robot. The robot, they call it brain on a Roomba. I mean, are you fucking serious? Brain on a Roomba? Brain on a Roomba. You couldn't have thought of anything other than that. You got Mr. Gutsy, you know, you got an Assaultron, and you name this character Brain on a Roomba. And it's just a brain on a Roomba. So you're telling me he couldn't just smash this brain and then hack the computer to get the fuck out of Vault 31? He was able to hack the Overseer's computer. They're the exact same computers in Vault 31 as they are in Vault 33. How's he getting trapped in there? How's he getting trapped in there? The Brotherhood of Steel is in it. Of course, you know, it's weird because it takes place in California. And, you know, what we know about the Brotherhood of Steel is they don't really have a very big presence on the west side. That's the NCR. Brotherhood of Steel is mostly out on the East Coast over by like DC and Boston, right? The Commonwealth. But you know, the Brotherhood is out here. But every single one of them is a whiny fucking coward. Right? So the first thing we find out about the Brotherhood is the person, the he, she, the they, them, the whatever, the fucking woman with the mustache is selected to become the next squire to a prestigious Knight Titus. She's going to go out into the wild, and they're all happy and celebrating and everything. And then she wakes up with some razor in her fucking boot. When she takes her boot off, she, I don't know, cuts her. Somehow she luckily doesn't cut her Achilles tendon, but cuts her foot up enough to where she has to be replaced, and she gets replaced with this black dude that we've been following around. brother Maximus. Only to find out at the very end of the show that now they originally intended to blame the shoe cutting on one of the other Brotherhood members that were jealous of her being promoted, whatever the fuck it is, getting promoted and not them. Only to find out later that she actually cuts herself because she's too afraid to go out into the wild. You're a Brotherhood of Steel member, and you're too afraid to go out in the wild. Okay. We get out into the wild. Knight Titus, we come across a Yao Guai. Brotherhood Knight Titus calls it an irradiated bear. What the fuck are you talking about? Have you ever played this game? Have you done anything more than a fucking Wikipedia page, like read a Wikipedia page on this video game? It's not an irradiated bear. It's called a fucking Yao Guai. And of course, this dude is fucking terrified from this thing. He's somehow, although, Maximus shoots the bear one time in the head and he dies. And then this guy's got like a cut on his neck or something. And instead of giving the dude just politely asking for a stim pack, this fucking guy's bitching about how he hates the wasteland and he never wants to come out here and it's a fucking cesspool of garbage. And why do it's Maximus's fault that he got run up on by this irradiated bear, this fucking Yao Guai that he's a Brotherhood Knight, doesn't know what a goddamn Yao Guai is, and belittles this guy. And so what does Maximus do? Doesn't get him the stim pack, just watches him die, and then he jumps in his armor and takes over his identity as Brotherhood Knight Titus. Sorry. But he hasn't been trained in power armor training, right? This dude's not old enough to have lived before the war and worn power armor for the U.S. armor. So U.S. Army, never been trained in power armor training. He just knows how to get in and get loose and use everything and do the rockets and fucking fly off and do all this other bullshit. Just knows how to do it. Never been trained in it, just knows how to do it. And then at the end, he comes back with this, what was their whole mission for being where they're at is they're supposed to find this Enclave member who's got some old war technology that the Brotherhood wants desperately, and it's stuck in this severed head. He brings back this. They finally find him at the end of the season. He brings back this head, but it's not the right head. And so they're about to kill him. And he's like, oh, no. I know where we can get the right head. I know where we can get the right head. And that's when, the he-she with the mustache says that, no, I cut my own foot. Please don't kill him. And so he doesn't. And so he defies his oath to the Brotherhood several times throughout the season. He brings them the wrong head, hoping that they'll just accept it and let him be. And then still ends up getting promoted at the end, even though he does everything wrong. Speaking of the Enclave, they're the whole reason that the Brotherhood is in a hurry to get this old war technology, because the Enclave is also on the lookout for it. But we never see one Enclave member the entire season. Not one mention. Maybe the scientist. I guess you're supposed to be under the impression that the scientist is from the Enclave, but the scientist is here in the Santa Monica area, in the LA area, the Hollywood area, but no other Enclave members can track this guy down. Even though a Brotherhood squire that's got no training whatsoever does it very easily. The NCR, who is supposed to, have the, at least in the video games, is the one that has the presence in California, is basically non-existent. You find out at the end of the season that the raiders that come in and kidnap Lucy's dad are actually the head of the NCR, and they're trying to, I don't know, maybe rebuild the NCR, but they're looking for this old war technology. So Lucy actually, takes the head, who, by the way, the scientist is, found in Philly, right? This settlement, Philly, and something happens to his leg. Oh, it gets shot off by the ghoul. Who now again, we'll get to the ghoul in a second because he was Walton Goggins was phenomenal. I don't want to take away from his performance because he was fucking great. But they're in Philly. His foot gets shot off, and so they give him this makeshift foot, but he's still dying from it apparently. And so he's like, "Hey, I just took some cyanide. I'm gonna die. Cut my head off with this ripper." And just take my head to Moldaver, the head of the NCR, who we think is just a random raider, and she'll exchange the head for the dad. And so she, Lucy just happens to, be there in the right spot at the right time, even though she's got no idea where she's at, what she's doing, anything about surface life whatsoever. She's got she just happens to be in the right place at the right time every single time. The NCR, we find out, is actually created by Lucy's mother, who everybody says she died in a famine, only to find out that no, she discovers the truth about Hank, her father, and what he's been doing with Vault-Tec. So she runs off with the two kids, Lucy and her brother, to go start a Shady Sands, which grows into the NCR and it becomes this fantastic city. So what does Vault-Tec do? Hank calls out Vault-Tec and they drop another bomb. In the middle of this bomb drop is Maximus, who's hiding out in a refrigerator, but this refrigerator has a giant fucking hole in it. But he's completely fine when an atomic bomb drops almost next door to him. It like the heat alone would have probably set his clothes on fire. But the Brotherhood of Steel is somehow close enough right after an atomic bomb is dropped in this area to find this kid before he starves or dehydrates, who is somehow perfectly fine in the middle of a radiation blast with a giant fucking hole in this refrigerator that he somehow lived through. We have no idea who his parents are, what they were doing at the time. He's just found by the Brotherhood, who just happened to be there literally right after an atomic bomb blast. So that's why he joins the Brotherhood. Lucy and him end up making it to Shady Sands at one point. And even though an atomic bomb dropped, we'll say less than 20 years ago, no, her fucking Pip-Boy, her radiation detector, not going off, even though previously she uses it to identify the ghoul's tracks. So she can follow, this radiation stuff from a couple of days old, but there's not enough radiation in the air after an atomic bomb has been dropped there to have any indication. She's dumped in this fucking water that's completely radiated. It's got a mutant fish in it. She's basically almost drowned. She gets so much radiation to the point where she gets radiation poisoning, but she doesn't age at all. Her face looks completely in perfect condition, just like it did when she first came out of the vault. But when she gets to her dad, who's assumingly been in this safe zone the whole time, looks like he's been out there for 100 fucking years. She does find out who Moldaver is. We find out throughout the series, throughout the season, who Moldaver is. Allegedly, she was the developer of this old war technology that the Brotherhood and everybody is looking for. But she was bought out by Vault-Tec, so she couldn't work on it anymore. Now, she isn't affiliated with Vault-Tec, but yet somehow still lives the 200 years after the bombing, and then is in the middle of Shady Sands when Lucy's mother gets a bomb dropped on her. Lucy's mother turns into a feral ghoul, but Moldaver is perfectly fine. She looks like she's, maybe 50 years old, but there's no skin tearing. She's still got all of her hair. She's got a lot of hair, actually. She looks to be in perfect condition, even though she was literally with a woman who got an atomic bomb dropped on her. They have no explanation for why she's 200 years old and still alive. Like it was a terrible show. It was a terrible fucking show. And now I went into it. I absolutely hated the first episode. I really fucking hated the first episode, and I hated it because it was so different from the game. It was literally like they looked at the Wikipedia page for what Fallout is, and they were like, "Got it, bro. Good enough. Good enough." And then you have Todd Howard comes out and says this is the canon. This can't be the canon because that means every single game before this is nothing. Is literally just garbage because these are not even close to the same storyline. Not even close in terms of lore or how the bombs are dropped or anything to that effect. Like it's literally completely fucking different. Completely fucking different. And so now if this is the war, it makes me question, does Todd Howard even still like Fallout? Why the fuck does he, is he still in charge of Fallout if he's going to just, okay, you can completely rewrite everything we've done before. No big deal. No big deal. Clearly the creators and the writer of the show could give two shits less about this video game. I guarantee, I can't guarantee because I don't know them from Adam, but it does not look like they've ever played a Fallout game ever. Again, it looks like they literally looked at the first page of Wikipedia for Fallout and was like, oh, we got it. We know. We got it. NCR, Enclave, Brotherhood. Just throw those terms out. People will understand. Some of it looks pretty cool. Like the Brotherhood gear looks all right. The Vault gear looks all right. Inside the Vault looks pretty cool. But I mean, looking like it and actually being like it are not the same. Just because I have a Vault suit on doesn't mean I'm part of Fallout, right? Like if I don't embody the Soul Survivor, then I'm not part of Fallout. It was just not good. It was just not good. Like I said, it's realistically more like a 3.5, 4 out of 5 out of 10. But I gave it a 5 out of 10 because of the way they treated Vault-Tec. I actually really like this corporate fascist idea. But outside of Walton Goggins as the ghoul, not to mention, so apparently Walton Goggins has been buried alive, right? Because he's a ghoul. Okay, he's buried alive, and he's been kept alive through a couple of IVs, and they these couple of guys who are also tasked with finding this old war technology, break him out of his grave site to find this thing. But he's not really looking for the old war technology. He's actually looking for Moldaver because he thinks that he knows where her family is. Well, in the very, very beginning of the show, the first thing we see is him and his daughter on horseback as the bombs are dropping. What do you mean, where the fuck is your family? You were with your daughter when the bombs started dropping. How do you not know what happened to her? The wife, I get. She was a Vault-Tec member, okay? I get it. She wasn't with them when they were at this little boy's birthday party, but the dad and daughter are right there as the bombs are going off, and they're trying to ride a fucking horse to God knows where. How do you not know what happens to your daughter? You're there when the bombs are dropping. You are holding her in your arms, riding this fucking horse to God knows where towards the bombing. How do you not know what happened to her? Like it literally looks like they had no idea what they wanted to do. They were like, okay, so we're going to start here, we're going to finish here, and then just whatever happens in between, who gives a shit? It was so poorly done. It was so poorly done that it honestly makes me question what the fuck Todd Howard is thinking, because he's an executive producer on this show. I don't understand how he can read this and be like, wait, why doesn't he know what happens to his daughter? She was there when the bombs were dropping. Or wait a minute, how does Maximus live through this explosion if that fucking refrigerator that he's in has a giant fucking hole in it? Did you guys not read what happened to Nagasaki? You guys not read what happened to Hiroshima? It wasn't just the explosion. It had caused so much external heat that things were going up in flames. If you're in the very epicenter of this explosion and there's a giant fucking hole in this thing that you're trying to hide in, that heat's going to get in. That radiation's going to get in. When Indiana Jones survived in Crystal Skull, it was a completely sealed refrigerator. There was no holes in it. That's why he was able to survive that atomic blast. You're not telling me that a fucking hole this fucking big is not letting in some radiation or some heat. It's just so mind-boggling that we're expected to believe that this lady Moldaver, who is completely on the outskirts with Vault-Tec, somehow was able to finagle her way in to this vault where they're cryogenically freezing everybody, live for 200 years, convince Hank's wife, Lucy's mother, to then come out onto the surface, start shady sands with you, and then be with her when another atomic bomb drops and she doesn't get touched. She's in perfect health. I get it. It's supposed to be humorous to the extent. That's why you have the slow motion blowing up of the head, the slow motion of the following the bullets. But you can only suspend belief so much before you just get into the blatant disregard for any type of standard filmmaking whatsoever. There's a reason Christopher Nolan gets to make whatever the fuck he wants, and Jonathan Nolan has to resort to television. Awful. Awful. It was bad. And I'm just going to end it with that because this was an illicit-filled review that I did not mean to elicit so much angst with, because it was not good. It was not good. They've set up another season. Apparently, they're going to New Vegas now, which again, I can almost guarantee you, because the NCR is gone, can almost guarantee you that New Vegas doesn't have any of Kaiser's Legion. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe, hopefully, fans actually get back at start complaining about this, because I've only ever seen people talk about how great this is. The show's terrible. The show's terrible. Like, it was done at such low quality standards of filmmaking that it looks like AI made this. Awful. And that's going to wrap up episode 8 of Another Gamer Dad podcast. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. If you have made it this far, do me that favor, hit that like, hit that sub, hit that notification bell, hit that follow button wherever you happen to be. Again, this is going to be on YouTube first, and then the following Tuesday, it's going to be up on Spotify. I think I can do video on Spotify as well. So I'm gonna probably stop doing just the audio. The cool thing about Spotify is if you just want to listen to it, excuse me, in the background, you can have the video up, but then, turn the picture of your phone off or whatever, and it still plays the audio part of it. So works a lot better than YouTube needing to have YouTube app open and up the whole time you watch this. So, but we're going to give it a try. We're going to see how it goes. So hopefully video in both spots. But wherever you happen to be, hit that follow, hit that like, hit that sub, hit that whatever button. Become part of the Sweetness family. Drop down in the description box. Join us over on Discord. Let me know what you think, what you thought of the Fallout series, because it was not good. From a filmmaking standpoint, it was not good. Start to finish, not good. At least in my opinion. I would love to hear what you guys had to say about it. Let me know if you got any super secret, low-owned baseball players in fantasy. Drop a couple of names. And also what you thought about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth if you played it. Did you love it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you not want to ever see a Final Fantasy VII game again? Let me know in the comments below. And keep on keeping on. Either way, that's going to do it for this one. BigSweetC, that's me. Wishing YouTube, Spotify, wherever you might be, wherever you're watching. I'm just hoping you're enjoying it. And have a wonderful day, night, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it might be. As long as you're watching, I'm wishing you a wonderful watching time. Sweetness, signing off. Peace.